Well, hey, welcome to Local. My name's Nathan. If we've never met, I'm one of the pastors. Leonard and I and a lot of our team, we're going to be hanging out in the lobby outside afterward for the egg dash. But in the chaos of it all, if we've not become friends, please introduce yourself. We would love to maybe buy you coffee sometime and hear about your life and hear about how this church could be there for you. We believe that church should feel familiar even if you've never been. And the only way we do that is by having honest, real, authentic conversations. So our hope is that you feel something that resonates with you and that this is maybe a safe place where you could be your authentic self and know there's some people who are going to love you the way Jesus loves us, or at least try our best. Well, I want to just tell you my number one goal today. My number one goal is that there would be some people in the room that maybe see something or hear something or have a conversation with somebody, or maybe it's something that we read in the Bible over these next few minutes that would cause you to want to come back and visit before Christmas Eve later this year. I don't know, you're like, dang preacher, you're 30 seconds in, already bringing the guilt trip. Listen, I get it. I want you to know, like, we understand real life happens. You've got Little League. You've got a whole bunch of things on your calendar, and your time slots are probably the most difficult thing to part with. But I really believe something special happens here when we worship at the Mill. But I just want to let you know that if 2 times a year is all you can stomach when it comes to church, I kind of get it. Like, we aren't always the best representatives of Jesus. You know, we read the cool things that Jesus did and have a hard time disagreeing with that. But then when we see the way Christians often act, it can be a little bit like getting kids to eat their veggies when it comes to doing things that the Bible tells us to do. So I just want to show you a quick little video to see if this is maybe what Christianity sometimes feels like to you. Check this out. This kid here, he's trying to eat his broccoli. You've been there before. It's hard for a lot of kids to eat broccoli or cucumbers. Unless there's like ranch dressing involved, right?
It tastes really good. Okay, here it comes. Ready?
The reason I know when I eat it, because it smells.
It does not smell good.
Tick tock, tick tock.
Can he do it? Nope.
All right, the deal's off now. If you don't eat it.
How is it?
Good.
It looks like you're enjoying yourself. Oh, yeah. Like you're enjoying. Okay, you okay? Are you enjoying?
I'm okay.
I'm okay. So, you know, Erica, at least they were like faking it. Our kids just straight up turn it down. Like, if it's vegetables, we don't want it unless there's some like ranch dressing involved, right? Like, I get it. Sometimes you know it's good for you. You know you need it, but it's not exactly what you want. And when you look at the way a lot of Christians are living, it's not exactly consistent with the Jesus that we see in the pages of Scripture. And it's really easy to kind of, from the outside looking in, saying it's just a bunch of hypocrites in there. And I'll do the thing we do in the Bible Belt and show up, you know, when you know, we're weddings and funerals, Mother's Day, maybe, but Easter and Christmas count me in. And even then, it's kind of like, just a difficult pill to swallow. And I just want to recognize for a moment that we haven't done everything right. And you may have been on the receiving end of what we call church hurt. Listen, this is all I've ever done, with the exception of a little job at Little Caesars in high school. I've only ever worked for churches. And I've been on the giving side of church hurt, making some stupid decisions in leadership. And I've also been on the receiving side of church hurt. And I just want to let you know, man, that we get it. We don't always do things right. We don't always carry ourselves in the most Christ-like way. And so sometimes there's a little bit of a cognitive dissonance when we try to see ourselves as part of a community of faith. And what I want to maybe offer you up today is what Resurrection Sunday offers us, what Jesus offers us, not just the religion of Christianity, but a relationship with Jesus, is it offers something more than what I think we show you on social media and what we show you sometimes with the things that we get defensive over or easily offended about. And I just want you to know Christianity is more than a hot take. It's more than a political stance. It's more than a routine that you do a couple of times times a year, what Jesus made available to us is a personal relationship with the God of the universe. He sent his son, who deprived himself of all his heavenly authority and power and walked this earth for 30 years and identifies with all of the aspects of humanity, yet overcome all the temptations that we face, all so that he could find himself on a cross, offering up his life in payment for the wrong things that we all do. Now, there's some good-looking people in the room today, but as you look around, there's no perfect people. Jesus was the only perfect person. And when we go through difficult things, we're like, why does a good God let bad things happen to good people? And the truth is, like, this should be freeing to recognize that none of us are good, and the only one who was good got what we deserved. And that becomes incredibly good news when we ask ourselves what's on the other side of death. And most of the time when you think about Christianity, we treat it what a lot of preachers call as like a fire insurance policy to make sure that we escape hell and get into heaven in the afterlife. But I just want to show you that I think it's so much more than assurance for the afterlife, but it's abundance and purpose and meaning and power and hope and healing for this life. And our hope this Easter Sunday and every Sunday as a local church family is that we learn how to walk in the fullness and the abundance and the purpose that's supposed to come when we have a personal relationship with Jesus. Paul would say it like this in Philippians chapter 3. He said, "For God's way of making us right with himself depends on faith. I want to know Christ and experience the mighty power that raised him from the dead." Now it gets really weird. Nobody talks like this. "I want to suffer with him, sharing in his death, so that one way or another I will experience the resurrection from the dead." I mean, right then and there, Paul shows us that life, even life as a Christian, is a mixed bag. Life as a Christian doesn't mean that everything is going to go our way as long as we read a chapter a day and hopefully keeps the devil away, right? Just because you prayed a prayer at VBS doesn't mean that life is going to go your way. And oftentimes, what brings us to church or brings us to ask questions about Jesus is when life pulls the rug out from under us and things are going wrong and we've got a whole bunch of unanswered prayers and our worst nightmares are becoming our reality. And we try praying, we try going to church, we maybe even throw a little cash in the offering bucket and we have these negotiations with God and we're like, "God, if I give up this or if I do this for you, will you do this for me?" And oftentimes life doesn't work that way. And so we have one more reason to kind of doubt that Christianity could change anything for us. But Easter weekend, in just the course of a few days, shows us that life sometimes feels like victory. Like this morning with the sun's up, we're celebrating, Grandma's cooking something good. It's going to be an awesome day. A lot of times life can feel like our prayers get answered with a yes, and it's Resurrection Sunday, and we want it to be every day, but oftentimes life ends up feeling a little bit more like Good Friday. A thundercloud, an earthquake, being abandoned by your friends, being made a mockery of, being accused of things that you didn't do, betrayal, abandonment, all the things. Life has highs and life has lows. But I think there's something in the message of the cross and the reality of an empty tomb that just maybe has the potential to give us what we need to weather the storms in life with dignity, with grace, with confidence. And that's what I want for us today, to unlock that. And in order to do that, I think we're going to go all the way back to the book of Isaiah, a prophetic literature in the Old Testament that talked about the coming Messiah, the chosen one, who would set God's people free from the power of sin and shame. And what you're going to see, even in the prophecies about God coming to earth with a rescue mission, he didn't come with power and prominence and political persuasion. He comes as a suffering servant leader and gives us a path to follow, so where we can too claim what Paul just claimed. Like, I want to share in his suffering so that I can also share in the power of his resurrection. And what I just want you to maybe begin to try our best to wrap our human minds around is the reality of both of those ideas, the reality of both of those circumstances happening in our everyday life. And even when life is bad, that we can still find the goodness of God. So go with me to Isaiah 53. Just a couple of verses that are prophesying hundreds of years before Jesus walked the earth, what his journey would be like. In verse 4, it says, "It was our weakness he carried. It was our sorrows that weighed him down. We thought his troubles were a punishment from God, a punishment for his own sins. But he was pierced for our rebellion. He was crushed for our sins. He was beaten so we could be whole. He was whipped so we could be healed. All of us like sheep have strayed away. We have left God's path to follow our own, yet the Lord laid on him the sins of us all." Right there is the paradox of faith in Jesus. And in one sentence, we have beaten and wholeness, whipped and being healed. These are two conflicting situations that I think describe a day in the life of not just Jesus on the cross, but also the things that we suffer through here on earth. The things that we ask God to help us out, to hook us up, to do anything he can to save my marriage, to save my finances, to get me a job, to answer the prayer. And oftentimes, life feels more like the beating and more like the punishment and more like being whipped than it does wholeness and healness. But yet here we find both of these realities in Jesus' own life. How much more should we expect that in our own? And just because we are going through a season of adversity where we may not be able to answer the question, "How are you?" with a smiley face, maybe what we want to say is, "I'm not okay and none of this makes any sense." It's that headspace that I want us to enter into and see how our faith and a relationship with Jesus helps us get through those times. The first thing that I want us to observe is the fact that he took our punishment. Have you ever had someone take the fall for you? I think back into college where all my friends had went away and we were all coming back home to hang out. And it was all my friends and their girlfriends, about 25 or 30 people hanging out at my mom and dad's. We're having this great party and it gets to the end of the night and we want to do what we used to do when we were in high school and play Halo all night. And so the guys are kind of like, "All right, seems like this party's dying down. Let's go over to Ryan's house, hook up the Xboxes and play." And the girlfriends were very much not okay with that. They thought, "You guys are like, that's immature. That's what you do in high school. That's not very like young adult colleges of you." And I'm like, okay, this is going to be bad because our little group of friends at the time had a little bit of a drama problem and the girlfriends like to team up and come against us. And it was never just like a fight between a boyfriend and a girlfriend. It was like kind of a group fight setting, right? And so I knew that this was going south. I could just kind of read the room. And I volunteered myself as tribute. And I said, "Bros, going over to Ryan's house. I'll take the heat." And so all of my girlfriend's friends all just kind of berated me and let me know how dumb that was and how bad of a decision that was. And they weren't ready to be done hanging out yet, while my friends got to go enjoy kind of a guilt-free night of playing video games. I mean, can you imagine what it would be like in your life right now if someone paid off your mortgage, your student loans? It would change everything. No more credit card debt. No more car payments. You would live differently without the fear of debt looming over your head. And I think that's one thing that Isaiah, this prophet, is wanting us to recognize that Jesus would do for us is remove all of the fear of punishment, remove all of the fear of condemnation, because he took it on himself. And if we really believe that to be true, then it should not just affect our stance on the afterlife, but it should change our sense of purpose for this life. To me, the Easter weekend, from Good Friday to Resurrection Sunday, reminds us that my faith in Jesus, it should make us full of life and free of fear. If we have had the fear of punishment removed, then it should make us want to respond with gratitude and tap into this relationship with Him, and not just this religious transaction that gets us into heaven. Yes, He's happy to do that. He wants to spend eternity with you, but He also wants to be your friend, your guide, your healer. He wants us to experience wholeness on this side of eternity. In the book of John, 1 John chapter 4 says that if we are still experiencing fear, it means that we have not fully encountered His perfect love, because perfect love of Jesus removes all fear, because we are no longer afraid of punishment. So if we can be free of fear, the only other option is for us to be full of life. That's what it means to walk in the wholeness that we have access to because of His beating, and the healing that we have access to because of how His body was mutilated. The punishment that He took for us should cause us to live life to the fullest every single minute. And I believe in a room with this many people in it, we've probably prayed a prayer to receive forgiveness of sins, but we have not necessarily experienced the healing that is meant to come along on this side of eternity. Now, I'm not saying this. I'm not saying that by becoming a Christ follower, that all of your prayers are going to get answered with a yes, and that you no longer have to worry about health issues or financial issues. What did Paul say in the very first passage we read? I'm going to share in His suffering so that I can also share in the power of His resurrection. Again, life is a mixed bag. I want to remind you, we don't have Resurrection Sunday without Jesus dying on Friday. Jesus tells us that to become one of His followers, we have to be born again. We don't realize our need for being born again spiritually without recognizing our spiritual condition that our sin has put us in. But oftentimes we think, if I pray this prayer the right way, if I start behaving myself better, then God is going to hook me up. And I just want to tell you that Christianity is not an epidural against the pains of life. I've been in the labor room twice when Erica gave birth to our kids, and we've got tons of respect for those of you power mamas out there who wanted to have natural births. But I'm just saying, like, I had a kidney stone once, and they say that's somewhat comparable to labor pains, and I was in bad shape. Bad shape. Screaming uncontrollably. Erica goes into labor. She's like, ooh, that was a bad one. And I'm like, you're scary. If you can handle. But then the epidural came in, and all that pain just faded away, and it was not so bad, at least from my perspective. But a lot of times I think we believe that our faith can be a shield or a bubble wrap from adversity. And we love stories like the mythological creature, the phoenix, the bird that is immortal, but in order for it to be immortal, it has to be engulfed in its own flames and rise again from the ashes. But there is no rising again from the ashes without being burned down first. And I think that's the way life goes, is that we appreciate the goodness of God through the adversities of life. And we can only really walk in wholeness and healing when we're honest about the brokenness in our own heart, in our own life. It's really easy to point the fingers and say, well, if politics were different, or if America was different, or if this happened, if that, then I could. And the problem is, we are just as responsible for the brokenness of our world as anybody else, because we all, like Isaiah said, have followed our own devices. We all, like sheep, have gone astray. And in a recognition of our own imperfections, and how our own imperfections, how our own sin, our own ways that we have missed the mark and have subjected ourselves to the pain that comes along with being human. just maybe when we get into that headspace, we can realize the paradoxical nature of following Jesus. And maybe then we begin to make sense of scriptures like in 2 Corinthians where it says, His grace is made perfect in your weakness. And maybe instead of looking at moments of weakness and looking at moments of feeling overwhelmed and looking at moments where it's like, I don't know how this is going to get any better, maybe in those moments, it's finally where we are ready to surrender and say, I've trusted you with my eternity, but I'm ready to walk with you and experience the fullness of a relationship with you, being my helper, my healer, my Lord, my guide today. And what I believe is when we tap into that, we find the substance that gets us through the moments that feel more like Good Friday and bring us through the silence of Saturday where it seems like all hope was lost. Where are you, God? Do you see me now? I mean, can you just imagine the disciples had given 3 years of their lives to this Jesus guy thinking that he was going to overthrow Rome, not realizing that what he was going to do was overthrow sin and overthrow death. And they were wanting a political, social revolution, but what Jesus was offering was a spiritual revolution. And yes, it is about the forgiveness of sins and receiving salvation so that we can be brought into a right-standing relationship with God and enter the pearly gates without fear of what's on the other side of death. But guys, can I just say that awaiting heaven can be more than just surviving earth? And so often that's the version of Christianity that we are portraying. Well, I'm just on my way to heaven. Just can't wait for God to come back and set everything right. And while He is coming back and He is going to set everything right, the way that Jesus taught us to pray, the Lord's Prayer, what does it start with? Your kingdom come on earth as it is in heaven. Guys, if we're just sitting here holding down the fort, waiting for God to come back, we are missing out on the abundance of life that He has called us into. The healing that we are meant to experience. And if Christianity has failed to yield that for you, I just wonder if maybe we have a wrong set of expectations. And maybe we don't realize the paradox of sharing in His suffering so that we can also share in His resurrection. Jesus modeled this for us in so many ways, but none more powerfully than the night that He was betrayed and was brought to the point of sweating blood, being overwhelmed with what He knew was about to happen when He would be tortured and executed. There was something on the other side of that pain that He had, that He was looking forward to, that wasn't just awaiting Him in paradise, in heaven. There was something that He had to look forward to that gave Him what He needed to overcome the suffering of the cross. And I just want to land the plane from Hebrews chapter 12, sharing with you how Jesus overcame. And hopefully we can find something in us that allows us to overcome the difficult parts of our story, the challenging parts of life, the overwhelming parts of life, the parts of life where it seems that there's no way out, and understanding that a relationship with Jesus not only gives us assurance of eternity, but abundance of joy for today. And in Hebrews 12 it says, since we are surrounded by such a huge crowd of witnesses, people who have gone before and done great things in His name, people who are sitting right beside you who've experienced the fullness of His grace, because we are surrounded of a crowd of witnesses to the life of faith, let's strip off every weight that slows us down, especially the sin that so easily trips us up, and let us run with endurance the race God has set before us. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith, because of the joy awaiting Him. Because of the joy awaiting Him, He endured the cross, disregarding its shame, and He is seated in the place of honor beside God's throne. because of the joy awaiting him. We have to believe that that joy is available to us now. And you may not hear the answer to all the prayers that you offer to him. You may not hear the answer that you want to hear. But despite all of that, we too can tap into that joy that brings us through whatever we are trying to endure right now. And I'll just conclude by saying this. You were the joy awaiting Jesus. So let him be the joy awaiting you. What if he could be more than just your Savior for eternity? Your get out of jail free pass. What if he could be your friend, your Father, your purpose, your joy for today?